Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with victory strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
Listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly. I'm that recovering good girl and your victorious woman empowerment partner. This is the place where us victory chicks and you men who care about us meet on Fridays to chat about the week, to find ways to live more powerfully and make our lives sparkle. I'm glad you came to Happy Hour today. Thanks for joining me. Remember last week when I was talking about music and how 80-year-old Charlie Grace is going to be at Rose Tree Park on July 24th? Well, I guess you could say I'm continuing the musical theme today because Vincent James and his spouse, Joann Pierdomenico, are here today. Vincent and Joann put together an anthology of stories about how music changed people's lives. They're joining our Friday Happy Hour to talk about ways music can be used to help people with Alzheimer's, stroke patients, and even us for our own memory stuff. Vincent is the man who played opening and background music at this year's Girlfriend Gala, and he was fabulous. Vincent and Joann are really sweet people, and I'll bet you're going to like them as much as I do. And also with me today is my sweetie, Joseph Eagle. He's usually doing massages when I'm on the air, but we're going to the Phillies game tonight with my cousins, Marianne and Richard. So he wrapped up his work early so we can get down to the ballpark. But it's so funny. Joseph usually listens to the show on Mondays, either on his way to or from work. And and I guess I'm thinking, it just occurred to me, you can do that too. Well, not on your way to or from work, but my producer, Fred, puts the happy hour shows up on the WCHE website under the podcast tab, usually on Saturdays, but sometimes on Mondays. Like this week, it'll be on Monday. So sometimes we talk about Joseph and I sometimes talk about the show at dinner on Monday night. But having him in the studio, well, excuse me, I kind of feel like when your parents come to school to see you in the school play. It's so funny. So Joseph says he doesn't want to be on the air with me, but maybe I can convince him before the show's over today. And last weekend, Joseph and I drove to New York City, and we did a bunch of things, including visiting one of our previous happy hour guests, the Reverend Susan Sparks. You remember her, don't you? She's the lawyer turned stand-up comedian and minister. And Joseph and I went to one of her services at the Madison Avenue Baptist Church of New York City. The biggest problem that we had that day was, and her service was good, but the biggest problem that we had was that June was Gay Pride Month, and I didn't realize that. And the last Sunday of June is the Gay Pride Parade. And one of the streets was totally blocked off. So getting to the Susan's services and getting back to the bus was quite an adventure. One street was totally blocked off it had to be for miles. And getting around, and then in the evening on Saturday night we were in Times Square. And Times Square at midnight is really interesting. But that's where we saw. Have you ever heard, they talk about it a lot, the Naked Cowboy on television? They talk about him a lot, but this time we saw the Naked Cowgirl in Times Square at midnight. And I never got the deal with the Naked Cowboy, but at least he had a guitar. The Naked Cowgirl, well, actually there were two of them, and I posted a picture of one of them on today's radio wrap-up. I can't imagine wanting to be out there with a few thousand people looking at me. And there are at least a few thousand people in Times Square, even as late as after midnight. And I'm not prudish, but I'm self-respecting. And if you see, like, her whole body's just painted like the American flag, and she's naked. But listen, the best thing we did in New York City was see the musical Bright Star, which unfortunately I can't tell you to go see because it closed on Sunday night. Bright Star was written by Steve Martin and Edie Brickell, and if you know Steve Martin's work, you know that he loves playing the banjo. So there was a lot of banjo in the show. In fact, after the intermission at the show, Steve Martin opened up the second act with playing a number with the cast of Bright Star. It's fabulous. You know, that show got 5 Tony nominations, including one for Best Musical. So I can't understand why it closed. And it was cheap. I paid $45 for my ticket, and I had a really decent seat in the balcony. So I guess good music and cheap seats weren't enough to keep it going. And maybe it was too upbeat and positive and didn't have a political message or make some political point. And maybe that made it deemed it unacceptable to the New York audiences and the New York critics. But the reason I'm telling you about it is this. In my opinion, it had a really good victorious woman theme. It's based on a true story about a young girl from a 1920s rural town who gets pregnant, and the boy's father takes the baby girl away from her so she wouldn't ruin his son's future. So she goes on to college and becomes a big deal publishing person, but it was always brokenhearted about that not having the baby taken away from her was a big sorrow of her life. So the show opens with that woman, now a professional publisher, as the show starts, singing "If You Knew My Story." And she sings about how she was given more than she thought she could handle, but that she didn't crumble and she didn't crawl. And that's something I think you victory chicks can really resonate with, can't you? Isn't it how you felt at different times in your life that you didn't think you could handle it, but you didn't crumble and you didn't crawl? But if people knew your story, and you don't really want to tell it, but if they knew, they'd have a good story to tell. I posted a link to the YouTube version of that song. It was from the Tonys. It's the very first. It's the way that the Bright Star musical opened up. It's worth listening to, and it's worth listening to the words. I posted it on the radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com. And, I get that part about not really wanting to tell your story, because when I interviewed so many women for my first book, Victorious Woman, I discovered that every woman has a story. Some stories are better than others. Some are heartbreakers, and some of them make you hear and you think, what were you thinking? What made you do that? Well, that's usually when when somebody's consistently making bad choices. But anyway, I don't actually like telling my story. In fact, when my first editor started reading Victorious Woman, she sent the first chapter back and told me to rewrite it by adding my story. When I questioned why, she said, what she said to me was, what right do you have to write this book? I want to know where you're coming from and why it's so important for you to tell stories of women overcoming challenges. Without hearing your story, I think the book falls flat. Well, I understood that logic. So in the first chapter, I tell just a little bit of my story, a little bit of what led me to write Victorious Woman. But, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But it was enough to satisfy the premise of Victorious Woman. And it was hard to do. And, after I did it, I had a new appreciation for all the women I was interviewing, because I was asking them to tell their story. I'll bet you know what I mean. Once you've passed it, you don't really want to revisit it. It's unlike a lot of guys that they tell that story over and over again. It becomes like their theme. Women mostly don't do that. In fact, in Victorious Woman, I didn't even want to talk to women who did that. But whatever your story was, it was your story of victory. And as the song says, you didn't crumble and you didn't crawl. And because you didn't, you got stronger. And that's the upshot of your victory, becoming stronger, better, more of the woman you truly are. And, of course, that's what Victorious Woman is all about. This year, speaking of stories, this year several women told their stories for the Victorious Woman contest. And one story is about a woman who was married to an alcoholic who was abusive. Another story was from a 50-something woman who didn't want to be a teacher when she was going to college, a teacher or a nurse. And instead, she became an engineer. But at that time, it was still at the beginning of feminism. So at that time, women weren't really accepted into engineering. and she had to overcome that special kind of discrimination. The winning story is from, she was the second place winner. The winning story is from a woman who grew up in foster care and had a special needs child. I posted her story on the radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com. And the second and third place winners will post on the 1st of August and September, respectively. And say, did you know July is National Parks and Recreation Month? And even more importantly, did you know that we have a lot of national parks in our area? Many of them just within a short drive from us. Well, last month I was in the Poconos and I discovered one of them, Delaware Water Gap. It's one I knew about for years but didn't realize it was a national park. And I didn't know how big or how beautiful it is. And I always presumed that national parks are all about hiking, but they aren't. Several parks in our area are historical sites. So you're probably familiar with Valley Forge and Valley Forge Park and the Hopewell Furnace. They're really close. And if you haven't been to Valley Forge lately, it's worth another look. And, of course, Gettysburg National Park, that's another one so rich in history and a great tribute to a hard time in our history. And it has lots of ghosts. And if you listen to the show regularly, you know I like things that are psychic and ghostly. Wait, you say you've never seen a ghost? Well, today I posted a picture that Joseph took a couple years ago when we went to something called the Civil War Winter Ball at the Gettysburg Inn. It was during one of the last dances of the ball, and we never saw the guy whose head in the picture is separated from his body. We never saw him like in reality. It's only in the picture. In fact, it wasn't until we got home that weekend that I saw it. I was downloading the pictures when I realized what it was, and it was so spooky. We've had it examined a couple of times and found out it's a valid picture. It wasn't like, a camera thing. So I guess valid's the word, to the best part. What I mean is, I'm pretty sure it's a true ghostly picture. And that's Gettysburg for you. And then there's another park in Delaware called First State National Park. Now, and I've never been there, but it's practically in our backyard in Newcastle, Delaware. And I posted a link to it on today's radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com. And there are a lot of days when everyone can go for free, like the last week of August. There's a link to that tells you what days the national parks are free. So I posted that on the radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com too. So if you're looking for a place to go with your kids or maybe your grandkids or just with your sweetie, check out the national parks around here. And listen, if you're over a certain age, I think it's 60 or 62, I don't think it's 65, you can buy a pass and go free to all the national parks. Well, Fred's giving me the high sign. We're going to go to a break. But before we do, one last thing. Last week I talked about Rose Tree Park Concert Series, and if you didn't look it up yet, and yes, I know it's in media. I know it's about a 35-minute drive from Westchester, but it's a free concert every night till the middle of August. So because I think it's such a good time, and in case you missed it last week, I posted the link to this year's concert schedule on today's radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com. So listen, go get some good happy hour, something to drink, and when we come back, Vincent James and Joann Pierdomenico will be here with us. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
When you wished you had more time for yourself, and now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering. And it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm your host, Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with Vincent James and Joann Pierdomenico. Hi, you guys.
Hi. Hi, Annmarie. Thanks for having us on your show.
Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here. You two are passionate about music and specifically music therapy, and your book, 88 Plus Ways Music Can Change Your Life, changed your life. Music changed, not the book, well, the book did, but before that. Music, that's how you met each other, through music, right?
That's right.
Tell us how.
So way back, 25 or so years ago, we were both attending a music event and didn't realize that I was there to write an article for a local entertainment paper, and Joann was there to meet a pen pal, friend of hers from early in school she had never met. He was from New York. He was a rising pop star, and she managed to connect with the radio station and got in to go meet him. And we actually met in the lobby of the event. It was an anniversary party for a radio station they were having as a fundraiser. And we became friends, shortly after, and blossomed into something really special.
That's really neat. And you've been together for 25 years?
26 now, yeah.
26. That's almost as long as Joseph and I. That you met each other. Joseph and I met each other, it's 30 years ago, but we've been married 28 years. It'll be 28 years.
Yeah. Nice. Our 25th wedding anniversary is in September.
Oh, what's your date?
September 28th.
Oh, we're the 24th.
Oh, nice. We'll have to celebrate together.
Yeah, that's right. And 25th is a big one, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Listen, Vincent, you've been a musician most of your life. Tell us what some of your musical history is.
Well, I crawled out of the womb with a keyboard. No. Well, I started in elementary school. When you go to elementary school, I think it was in 4th grade, and they said, well, if you're interested in playing an instrument, pick what instrument you would like to play and, talk to your parents. So I went home and told my mom and said, I want to play guitar. And my mom said, no, try again. And when I said, how about drums? And they said even louder, no.
Yeah, really.
Have you heard drums in the house? It shakes.
Oh, yeah.
And then I said, okay, how about trombone? So I took up the trombone. I played that all through school, junior high, high school, marching band, jazz band, all the concert band. And another big part of my beginning was probably around the age of 12 or so, my mom had brought a piano into the house. She had always wanted to learn to play the piano. At this point, she was in her 40s, and she had never played, so they brought a piano in the house so she could start taking lessons. And I was like drawn like a bead of honey to the piano, and just started playing around with it. I'm like, when can I start taking lessons?
I know, Vincent, I've heard you play, and you play beautifully.
Oh, thank you. And just from then, it's just... After that, pop radio, I started taking classical piano lessons initially, and I still love classical music, but then somewhere along the way I got bit by the pop music bug, on radio. And
well, you were a teenager, right?
Yeah, I probably had a little bit to do with it.
Yeah, I would think. And then you managed bands?
When I got out of college, I got involved doing more songwriting, and it's not related to my college degree. I'm an engineer by trade, but once I was done with school and didn't have to study every night, I got more involved in writing music, ended up managing bands, helping to run recording studios, even owned part of the studio for a while, and so did a lot of different things. And then at one point I started also going out and performing myself, either with background music or playing the piano and singing, and evolved into further doing custom songs for people.
I know. I was on your website listening to some of your custom songs.
So, like for weddings, anniversaries, or any kind of special occasion, people, thanks to the beauty of the Internet, people contact me from all over the world. I've had clients from China, India, Canada, the UK, Australia, and of course the U.S. contact me, and to me it's really.
Yeah, didn't you fly out to somebody's wedding or something?
I did.
Did I read that on the website?
Yeah, it was an anniversary, a big one for them. I think it was a 20 or 25-year anniversary, and they flew me out to San Diego. Only time I've been to San Diego, and it was beautiful. And I went and played and sang the song, and did play a bunch of other songs that they would like to hear. And
pretty neat.
It was a really fun experience. And to me, I love being able to take their story and create a song that's really their story. And especially I love when I get to perform it for them live, and the person who's receiving the song, it's the very first time they're hearing it. I don't get to do that every time, but when I do, it's really special.
Oh, I would think. I'll bet you it's really emotional.
Yes.
Yeah, I would think so. And Joann, like me, you love music, but you tell me you sing as well as I do. So we're both good candidates for lip syncing, huh?
Yes.
But here's the real question. Do you have the moves?
Well, that depends on who's watching the moves.
I know. Like nobody sees my moves but Joseph. Like he sees that because I'd be embarrassed to, but I can really rock out on songs when I'm in the car with Joseph. Mm-hmm. And he even listens to my singing. Does Vincent listen to your singing?
He thinks I have a beautiful voice and that I can sing well, but...
I love her singing.
See, that's love, yeah.
But see, you know what? That's biased love.
I know.
That's a biased opinion because my children will hear me sing and they're like, if we're in the car, they put the windows up.
Or even funnier, they'll say, who sings that song? And she'll say, oh, Journey. And they'll say, keep it that way.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about the musical Bright Star, and Joseph came home last night, and I've been listening to the CD all week, and so I've been, like really excited about the music, and so I started singing it to him, and he's like, "Where is that from?" I'm like, "From the musical we saw last weekend." He's like, "Oh, big surprise!" So, okay. But listen, seriously, music got you through your difficult childhood. Tell us about that.
Well, growing up, it was really difficult. My background, I got teased for a lot of things. Bullying back then was very normal and nobody ever did anything about it. So whatever I could be bullied about, I got bullied about. Mm-hmm. Some of it was my ethnicity. I'm half Japanese. My mother is from Okinawa, Japan. And back when I was little, I really looked like I was Japanese. Not so much now, but I did back then. So I got teased for that. I got teased for my height. I was always the smallest one in class. My mother was about 4'9". Wow. So she was tiny. So I got teased for that. I had a single-parent household. My mom raised us by ourselves. My dad wasn't in the picture. So everyone else I knew had two parents. We were poor. We lived at poverty level, so we couldn't afford to have the nice things that other children had or couldn't do the things that other kids could do. So really, there was so much going on in my life. Oh, and to top it off, my mother suffered from schizophrenia. So that was like, the final whammy for it all. People would tease me in our neighborhood.
On top of everything else, yes.
In the neighborhood, at school, you're the one with the crazy mom, or your mom's crazy, and that's painful.
Well, did they know, like, was it obvious? I guess must have been obvious if other people knew it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard when you're, it's hard when you're an adult, but it's really hard when you're a kid.
Right. And nobody understood it. Nobody, even I didn't understand it. I just lived with it the best that I could. So for me, not really being able to talk to many people about all the different things because nobody could really understand the compilation, of issues that I had as a child. Nobody could really understand it all. So, you got to a point where you really didn't talk about it and you just internalized everything. So, as I got a little bit older, I started realizing the one...
Wait, let me just tell you want to say one other thing. You told me, I thought this was really interesting. You were raised Buddhist.
Yes. Yes.
So you didn't go to the Catholic Church around the corner?
No. We had to travel quite a way to go to our Buddhist meetings. Wow. Because they weren't very local. There wasn't too many. So that too made
you different.
Right. Yep. So, yeah. So I had a lot of, strikes against me, if that's how you wanted to look at it. And actually, before I get into, listening to a lot of music, when we were younger, my mother participated in a lot of world peace culture festivals, which we held every few years. And as part of it, music was always a big part of the culture festivals. And there were a variety of different choruses, different bands. There was even like a steel pan band. There was a fife and drum corps, a brass band. I mean, you name it. There was people playing it, and I was always drawn to it. Like, I didn't want to go see anything else unless it had music. They had people dancing with the most beautiful, bright costumes, and just loved, every second of it. And I remember saying to myself as a child, when I grow up, one day I want to be able to do something like that. So, but as I got a little bit older, into my teenage years, I really gravitated toward music. Music is what brought me peace during really rough days.
I think that's true with a lot of people, Joann.
It did. It really did. And, and it was music, I think, too, that brought me friends. Because when we were in gym class, like if we were in a weight room and we had to take weights for a couple of weeks, the gym teacher said, okay, well, go ahead and select a station. And so different kids would select different stations. And, of course, I gravitated towards the kids that listened to the style of music that I liked, which was pop, 80s pop. So I got to make more friends that way, and it was great. So music, I turned to it. When I came home from school, I would just go turn on my little clock radio that I had that was a hand-me-down from my brother. And when my brother wasn't home, I'd go into his room and mess around with his record player. Because he would always tell me, Joann, don't go in my room and don't touch my record player. Yeah. And, of course, the little sister, being rebellious, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So I go in and I play all kinds of records, everything from, Chaka Khan to Barry Manilow, to Loverboy. And, of course, my brother didn't have the records that I liked, so I started accumulating a few, through money that I had gotten from babysitting. And it was all the 80s stuff like Duran Duran and the Culture Club and all that great stuff. So music, I turned to music. It made me so happy. It was my therapy. Music was my therapy.
And then there's Boy George with Culture Club. He was already on the outside, so a lot of people identified with his music.
Yeah, we actually got to see him recently. Him and Cyndi Lauper, they performed down at the Borgata.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a wonderful concert.
Oh, that's neat. I've seen him on TV, and I love Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah, she was excellent.
Tears, just different songs that they did just really brought it out.
Mm-hmm. And you were on Dancing on Air.
Yes. As I said, music was my therapy. Friends of mine and myself would go to the under 21 clubs. And one particular one over in Cherry Hill or Pennsauken area in New Jersey had a dance contest. And if you were the winner of the dance contest, you won passes to go on Dancing on Air. And our group of 4 or 5 people, we won. We got to go on, and they liked us so much they had us come back several more times.
That's neat.
So it was so much fun.
Neat. Yeah. I want to talk about more about the music therapy. We need to take a break, so everybody sit tight. We're going to go away for a couple minutes, and then we'll be back with Joann and Vincent.
Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com.
I'm Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with Vincent James and Joann Pierdomenico. And we were talking about music therapy. So you're both so passionate about music therapy. How has that made a difference for you?
Well, and one thing I want to mention is the fact that, we knew, this much about how important music was when we started this, Keep Music Alive mission.
Yeah,
and now we know
thimbleful,
Yeah, really. And now we know, maybe, 2 or 3 thimbles full, and it's like peeling back the layers of an onion. The more we dig into it, the more we learn. And I know just personal experiences, Joann had a very, special experience with her mom that she might want to talk about, how therapy really helped her mom. And I could talk about some of the times where I went and played in retirement homes and still do, and how it really affects people. They, when I go in and play music they're familiar with from the 40s or the 50s, and you really see the room light up.
Wow.
And in one of the stories in our book, it talks about how a woman who was basically catatonic, head down, and actually Bluesman Jay story.
Oh, yeah, I know Jay Gallo.
And he talks about how he was playing, show tunes. Once he started playing, his beautiful angelic voice from across the room, lit up, started singing, and this woman had really kind of been out of it for quite a while, for months, and no real communication. And she really, came out of it and was singing along with him through the entire presentation. And, the staff was urging him, keep playing, pick another one, pick another one. And he didn't really understand the significance because he didn't know the history of this woman until after the show. And then, once he was done playing, she kind of went back down.
Wow.
So the music in those environments really makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Excuse me, tell me, what is music therapy?
Music therapy.
Because I was looking around, it is a lot of things.
It is a lot of things. Music is any time you use music to help someone with speech, memory, or movement in any way. And it could be formal music therapy. It's a trained profession. You have people that get bachelor's degrees in it, master's degrees in it, and it can be informal. I mean, I'm a musician. I don't have a degree in music therapy or anything like that, but any musician can share their gift of music and help people in different ways, depending on what they're suffering from.
Well, excuse me. In last week you're part of my Victory Chicks community, Joann, I think, yes. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about how music really provides the soundtrack for your life. And, we remember when music was popular when we started coming of age. Mm-hmm. And, if we broke up with somebody, we remember that music. And so, all kinds of, and the song you dance to at your wedding is always really important. But has there been any, now we talked earlier this week about music and Alzheimer's. Is there any research, so that's so prevalent right now for those of us taking care of parents or sometimes even like a spouse, we're at that stage too where people are getting like early stages of dementia or Alzheimer.
That's right.
So is there any research around that, the music therapy and Alzheimer's?
So, there are numerous studies being done, and it's ongoing. One particular study that, we looked at was where they had, I think, close to 70 or 80 people participating in a study at different levels of Alzheimer's disease. And what they noticed is over a 6-week period, one of the difficulties that people are in, retirement homes that have these conditions, they're more irritable, agitated. They interrupt activities. They have more anxiety, and they actually can track the levels, the occurrences of these things with the residents. And after a 6-week period of music therapy, trained music therapists, working with these patients in several homes that they were working with, they actually decreased the number of these incidents of anxiety, activity disturbance, and aggression by 50%. And the sad thing, though, is once they stopped doing that, the music therapy sessions, within 4 weeks later, it had gone back to the original level.
So it needs to be ongoing.
It needs to be an ongoing thing for that sort of thing, in order to have the behavioral outcome that you're looking to retain.
Wow. So is just playing music from somebody's time period, is that enough to help with Alzheimer's? Is there anything else that you can do?
Well, music, you definitely want to try to use music that's from their time period or that they're familiar with, or even upbeat music. It doesn't have to be something they're familiar with. But I don't know that it really is improving the actual what's going on in the brain. We can talk about that in a little bit. People that aren't not yet suffering, we can sometimes delay dementia by playing instruments and doing other brain activities that expand our capabilities, and you may not forestall it forever, but you can delay the occurrence. But in those situations with the Alzheimer's or dementia, the music therapy is basically to help give them a better quality of life. Both for them and for their family members who may be visiting. It makes them more responsive to them, makes them more engaged, more involved. It makes the patient happier, makes the families happier, and it's a win-win.
I was just thinking when you said that, I was thinking about when my mother was dying, and in that time that we had hospice coming to her apartment, but Joseph and I were staying overnight there, and I didn't know what to put on, what kind of music to put on. So I Love Lucy was on, and I know that was from her time period. So there was like an I Love Lucy marathon, and I thought, gosh, I hope she likes this. If she can hear this, I hope this isn't aggravating her. And then when hospice came in, that was over a weekend, and when hospice came in on Monday, they put Enya on. And I don't know if my mother liked it or not, but it certainly made me a whole lot more peaceful. In that process, because you're ushering somebody out of this life, and that's hard.
They have shown that many types of instrumental music can actually lower blood pressure, lower heart rate. They've done studies in hospitals where they can actually make patients physically calmer through the use of music. So certainly that was helping for you, and I'm sure Enya's music, knowing what her music is like, was helpful to your mom.
For pain management.
Yes.
Oh, is it really Enya's music? Interesting.
It distracts your brain from what you're feeling. Anything that takes your brain off of it and something is peaceful and enjoyable. Now, obviously, if it's music that they're familiar with and really like a lot, that helps. But even if it's not something you're familiar with, I think something like a lot of instrumental music, choral music. You're not playing, Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath. Nothing against that music because I love it, but
right.
There's a
not
different
unless
music.
They really love that style of music.
There's different music for different times in your life and different situations.
So tell me, if I'm going to use that for myself so that I can ward off anything like that, Alzheimer's. Dr. Michael Dow was here earlier this year, and he said take turmeric and black pepper. So I've been putting that into like orange juice.
Right.
And that it clears up inflammation. So that was one thing he said. That their studies have been turmeric in India. They have a low rate of dementia and Alzheimer's. But tell me about the music. How do I use that?
I think you want to.
I mean, tell me, is it more than just doing the moves?
Come on now. Now you're going to laugh because I can play the music, but I got no moves. I lost my train of thought. It just sped down the track.
It almost looks like he's doing the chicken dance.
All the time. What we can do, what really helps our brains and memory is to be engaged in things, whether it's, studying for something, if you're taking college courses, that's one to help your brain. And another way to do it is to be actively involved in music. If you're, it helps more if you take up an instrument, whether it's piano or guitar or ukulele, because...
Vincent, how hard is that at midlife to take up an instrument?
I think I'm not going to lie, it's harder than when we're 10, right? It's harder than when we're 10 years old, but you can absolutely pick up an instrument. My mom learned how to play classical piano pieces, in her 40s, and really enjoyed that and played it for many years.
Actually, tell her about your... guitar student.
My one guitar student who started about a year ago, he came up to me at a holiday party. I was playing piano. He said, "Can you teach me how to play guitar?" I'm like, "Well, sure." And then his next thing out of his mouth, "Guess how old I am?" I'm like, "I don't know, 65, 70. You hate when people do that. You want to guess?
Yeah, because you never want to go too high.
Right. And he says, "Well, I'm about to turn 80.
Wow.
Like, wow, and you really want to learn how to play guitar? He says, yes. So we started a couple months later. He was going to Florida for a couple months. He came back. We started. It's now been a year, and he's still taking guitar lessons. He's learning how to play songs, and he sings and plays, and he's loving it. And it's, it was hard, Herb, because in guitar playing, especially because you got to build up the calluses on your fingers. Yes. But he worked through that. It was a little hard. It was harder than, if you were 10 or 20, but he was able to do that. And really enjoyed.
He was a hairdresser, so he dealt with the chemicals of hairdressing, which really softened up his fingertips. So it was
made it more difficult. Mm-hmm. So being actively involved in playing an instrument, I think, is the most beneficial. But even if you're not, actively listening, taking time away from our crazy life, and everything that we're doing, and actively listen to jazz or classical, or, what I call more interesting, more innovative music, not just the simple 3 pop songs, which again I love. But I think, engaging our minds is what really helps keep the brain going.
Well, Joseph's been talking about going back to play. He played, when I first met him, he played in bars and, he sang and played piano and guitar. But he hasn't done it. And then he bought a guitar. Vincent, I think I was telling you this, that he bought a guitar.
That's a sign. He wants to do it again.
Yeah, he wants to start, except he does massages.
Right.
And he'd have to build up the calluses on his fingers again.
Yeah.
So he's, his fingers are wussy,
Well, trust me, as we get older, all of our fingers are wussy.
We need to take a break. So, Joann, when we come back, you have a very interesting story about music and stroke with a situation with your mom. So let's talk about that when we come back.
Sure.
So everybody, it's a good story. So everybody hang in there. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women. I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous victorious women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. This is Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with Vincent James and Joann Pierdomenico. And before we went to break, Joann, we were talking about music therapy, and you have a very interesting story about what happened with your mom, who had a stroke. She was in her 80s, right?
Yeah, she was about 82 when she had her stroke, and she actually had a stroke in the hospital while she was there being treated for a UTI.
Oh, my goodness.
And unfortunately, I realized that she had a stroke, or I believe she had a stroke, but they didn't. Because the symptoms were very similar to the UTI. So
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, I did research on my own and finally had to get stern with them about it and have her tested, and they finally tested her, and that day they were like, bam, let's get her into the stroke unit. So they started, doing what they could for her there. But on my end, I, got on the internet, researched how music could help stroke patients. So I decided on my own that I was going to do my own music therapy for my mom, since that wasn't part of the therapy she was going to be receiving there at the hospital. So basically, I would, for myself, let me just start with myself, watching your parent go from normal to seeing what they're like after they have a stroke, not being able to speak, not being able to eat, not being able to walk, that's hard. That is really hard, to see someone go from independence to being dependent on everyone and everything. So I used to go visit my mom every day after she had her stroke, and it's an hour drive each way. So I, for myself, played music as my own therapy to help me, because I was very sad at my mother's condition and didn't really know how severe it was going to be in the end. So listening to music on the way there and listening to music on the way home, it made me happier. So when I went to visit my mom, I wasn't like doomy and gloomy and, things are going to be okay. We're going to get through this. You're going to be okay. And so I always listened to upbeat music, on the way there and home. So what I did for music therapy for my mom was, when she was sleeping, I would softly play different styles of music, like classical, jazz, meditation style music, just very softly, ever so softly, because I really wanted her to think and dream, and I didn't want her brain to go on vacation.
And she was sleeping a lot.
She slept. She was really basically comatose.
Wow.
And, that was very hard to watch. So I would, talk to her when she was sleeping, and I would play music for her when she was sleeping and tell her about the music when she was sleeping. And then when she was awake, I would play more upbeat music, not loud, because at least with my mom as a stroke patient, she couldn't listen to loud music. She didn't like loud sounds. When the staff would come in and they were talking loud, she would be all upset about it, and I'd have to tell them, you have to tone it down. She can't deal with it. So all the music that I played for her was soft, even if it was upbeat music. But it was soft enough that she could enjoy it. And I played everything from 80s to rock. And then one day I got a package in the mail from my uncle in Okinawa, Japan, who had sent us, it was a 4-CD set of traditional Okinawan music from back in her day.
Wow. When
she was, in her 20s. And I played it for her. I put it on. As soon as I turned it on, she started crying, and I hit that off button so quick. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're crying. And she was able to whisper, no, I like it, because it brought back memories for her.
Wow.
So I was like, okay. So it was a little hard, to hit the on button, but she, to watch her cry. But it was a happy cry.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I would sing while the songs were playing, and I've tried to get her to sing along, because her speech was very, very difficult. Really, to be able to understand her, she had to basically do what she felt was yelling to be able to get it out. So I would say, if you know some of the words, just sing them. Let's just sing, And
that's a good way of doing that, because if you had a stroke and and you have lost some of your speech patterns, that's a better, instead of reading a book or mouthing some other words, to do musical words sometimes is easier.
Yeah, there's actually one form of a stroke called aphasia, where people are able to sing, but they're not able to speak. And then they'll do specific therapy with them, where they'll sing, I need to go to the bathroom, to get them to do that, and then try to slowly walk them back to, I need to go to the bathroom.
That's interesting.
And it doesn't always work to bring them back, but it's just a very interesting type of stroke that some people have called aphasia, and sometimes they're able to use the music therapy because they're able to sing phrases and to bring them back into speaking.
Doesn't that fascinate you?
Yes.
Like, how is it that you can sing but not speak?
Yeah.
How do those words come?
Well, it's like we recently saw a thing in the news, a woman who woke up from surgery in Texas, and she woke up with a British accent.
Oh, I saw that on television. I did. That was odd. Yeah, she had...
Yeah. Our brain is really amazing, and we're probably only using like a tenth or less of the capacity.
And Joann, we were talking about this. Your mother was schizophrenic, and there's some depression around with that. So what are ways that you can use music, and Vincent, chime in here, to beat depression?
Well, depression, when I don't know if you've ever suffered from it, but I think, at some point, most of us have had some really down times, and it's really hard to come out of a funk. And I know, especially as women, we're very hormonal. And so our, moods can go up and down, just like that. And I would say for me, just being able to put on music that, like dance music, that immediately lifts you up from, a depressed state. At least for me it does. And I know that there's been studies that it has helped people with depression. Teenagers, girls that are very hormonal, they need music probably more than we do, and I think they're very dependent on it.
And because you have teenagers.
Yes, we have two teenage daughters. One is 15 and one is 19. And they've always had music around them because ever since they were born, Daddy played keyboard, he sang, and so they've always had the influence of music around them, and they know that we've turned to music for different things in our life, and I think it's just natural for them.
Music definitely can shift your mood. If you're feeling, whether you're suffering from a chronic depression or, it's a isolated case, with situational what's going on, music has been proven to boost your mood and help lift you out, and it can, it opens up your outlook on things. And what helps even more is if you sing along to music. I mean, singing has...
I always sing along, but by myself in the car.
You don't roll down the window and try to get the car next to you to sing along?
Only if it's my form of road rage.
Road rage. You sing at them. Get out of the way!
And then they say, let me get away from this crazy woman.
But yeah, singing, and when you talk about dancing, it's being engaged with the music. Listening is important, but being engaged, whether it's by singing or dancing, is, increases our level of, melatonin in our brain.
And dopamine.
Which is a calming effect, and actually it will make you feel better.
Now let's talk, we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to talk about 88 plus ways that music can change your life. It's an anthology. It's stories that people wrote to you. How did you come to write this?
Well, a couple of years ago, I had the idea I wanted to do something more for music than just my own music. So I launched this mission with Joann, Keep Music Alive, an organization to promote the value of music for educational reasons and for therapeutic reasons, and overall just making us a happier, society. So I thought, well, how do I get this message out? And one day just the idea streamed down for me, well, how about a book of stories, of inspirational stories of other people's experiences? Because we only have so many experiences, but, out there are hundreds, millions, thousands. And so we reached out to literally thousands of people asking, do you have a story you might like to share, how music really affected you or a family member, or something that you saw. Maybe it wasn't even you, but you witnessed something. And we had over 150 come back that we put in the book. And, some of the people are famous. Some people are, regular people like you and me. Just, we were so gracious that many people wanted to contribute their story.
Yeah, and do you have a lot of really good stories in there? And am I remembering this correctly? Bobby Hart from Voice and Heart?
Yes.
Was one of the contributors. So, and I can't remember what he wrote, but I know he was big in the 70s or 80s?
Yeah, Bobby Hart wrote, along with Tommy Boyce, were the main songwriters behind a lot of the early Monkees music.
Like the Last Train to Clarksville and the theme song.
Hey, hey, we're the Monkees.
But weren't they out there themselves, weren't Boyce and Hart?
And they also toured together, yes.
With the Monkees?
With them and also on their own.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, they were known as an artist together as well, but the biggest success they had was as songwriters.
And who else do you have in there that we might recognize?
We have Rick Wakeman from Yes, the keyboard player. We have Vanessa Carlton. We have Rob Parisi, who wrote and sang "Play That Funky Music," Wild Cherry. Saida Garrett, a songwriter, wrote one of my most favorite songs, "Man in the Mirror," from Michael Jackson.
Oh, nice.
And we have Billy Steinberg, who wrote "Like a Virgin" from Madonna and many other hits.
So all those people contributed.
Yes.
And you're still looking for stories, and you have something going on. You have something going on now. Your new book is coming out in October.
That's correct.
The second edition of our current book is coming out in October. It's basically a more condensed version of what we have, but we also have a volume 2 coming out of 88 Plus Ways Music Can Change Your Life. And in addition to that, we have a special marching band edition and a special Armed Forces edition.
I love that. When you told me that, I thought, that's so neat, an Armed Forces edition. That's great.
Yeah, because music is
very
therapy.
Important to the soldiers and people out there in the field, and they've been doing that for 60, 70 years now, where they've really incorporated music.
So how can my listeners get a copy of your book?
The best way is probably online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, online.
Books A Million.
And they can also find us online at keepmusicalive.org. And they could submit a story if they have a music story they'd like to tell us about.
And if I want to have a special song written for, say, Joseph, or anybody I love. Joseph's in the state. We're laughing because Joseph's right here. So what's that website?
You can find me there and my music at lovesongs.com.
Lovesongs.com. Joann and Vincent, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate that you were here.
Thank you for having us.
It's wonderful to be here for your happy hour.
For our happy hour, thank you. And okay, we're getting ready to start the July 4th weekend. I have 2 quotes for you Victory Chicks and you guys who love us, and both about music. And I chose the first one because I'm sad that Bright Star didn't last on Broadway. Maybe it was too optimistic, and if that was the case, they should listen to what Mariah Carey had to say. And I agree with her. She said, a lot of people are singing about how screwed up the world is. I don't think everybody wants to hear about all that all the time. I still agree.
I love that.
And then Katie Greenwood said, she reminds us that music isn't just notes and playing them. You learn the notes to play the music of your soul. And I, Annmarie Kelly, think about it this way. Music gives your soul a voice. On this 4th of July weekend, I hope you're doing something fun, and I hope you get to see some fireworks. I love fireworks. I think fireworks represent the sparkle that's in each of us. And the more you victory, the more dazzling is your sparkle. So enjoy our Independence Day, and come back to be with me next Friday at 3 o'clock for the Friday Happy Hour. Jen's on.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.